Hello everyone. Thank you all for watching the video. Wishing you all good health and peace. The dawn crept over the mountains, its light a soft veil spilling through mist that cradled the hills like a whispered prayer. Lytuca stirred, her breath a faint wisp in the morning's chill. As roosters crowed, their calls sharp against the hush of a world waking. She stepped lightly, her bare feet brushing the cool earth of their bamboo house, its walls creaking softly under the weight of years. She knelt by the hearth, her hands worn by labor, feeding twigs to the fire, coaxing flames that flickered like fragile dreams. A pot of rice porridge simmered, its earthy scent weaving through the air. A quiet vow for her daughter Han, who darted outside, her small form chasing a chick across the yard, her giggles piercing the dawn stillness. Tien, her husband, moved through the garden, his silhouette steady against the gray light, his hands tending the vegetables with a care that spoke of love for the earth. The day unfolded, bright with routine, yet Lytuca's heart held a delicate pulse, as if testing the weight of a future yet to bloom. Their home perched on a slope, its bamboo walls weathered by rain and time, a frail refuge woven into the mountain's embrace. The yard sprawled outward, a patchwork of life. Rows of greens glistening with dew, a chicken coop humming with soft clucks, and a half-built rose gate, its bamboo frame a dream of beauty yet to climb. Each morning Lytuca gathered eggs, their shells warm in her palms, or fed the chickens, their feathers catching the light. She walked the market trail, her steps sure on paths worn deep by years, the basket heavy on her shoulder. Tien watered the garden, his hands deft among the mustard greens and lettuce, their leaves a green promise nourished by chicken manure, a hope stitched from the sweat of their labor. Han, barely 3, trailed them, her laughter a melody when hunger didn't dim her spark, her tiny hands eager for the world's colors. Orange rinds, red tomatoes, the glint of a stream beyond the hill. Lytuca watched her, a smile softening her lips, but her eyes carried shadows, memories of lean seasons, of Han's cries unanswered, of days when the mountain felt too vast. Those years had carved her, a stone smoothed by a river's patient flow, her strength a quiet fire beneath her calloused skin. That morning the air was crisp, the hills draped in fog like a lover's scarf, the stream's murmur faint beyond the trees. Lytuca stirred the porridge, her hands steady, the steam rising like memories stirred. Han sat nearby on a woven mat, her small hands clutching a piece of meat, her eyes bright but hesitant, her appetite frail. Lytuca knelt, her voice soft, a lullaby woven into words. "Eat, little one, just a bite." Han giggled, her resistance a spark, her tiny fingers pushing the meat away, and Lytuca's heart eased, though a quiet ache lingered, for the child's health, for the school that waited beyond the mountain's grip, a dream tethered to papers not yet theirs. Tien appeared, his shirt damp from the garden, his grin breaking through the morning's chill. "Done watering," he said, his voice warm, his eyes meeting hers, searching for the woman who'd carried their world through seasons of want. "Vegetables look good," she said, her hands pausing, her heart lifting at his care. "Since the manure they've grown strong." He nodded, his hand brushing Han's hair, his fingers lingering as if to anchor her to this moment. "Feed her well, Tuca. She'll need it for school someday." She smiled, her throat tight. "She's picky, but we'll get there." Lytuca turned, her thoughts drifting like the mist outside. She thought of their struggles, years of hauling baskets on foot, the market trail slick with rain, her back aching under the weight. She thought of the nights when Han's cries were her only companion, the hunger a shadow that clung to their bones. She thought of the motorbike, a dream made real with the sweat of their grapefruit grove, its hum a song that tamed the mountain's steep paths, freeing her from the endless walks. She thought of Tien's journey today, down the mountain to his mother's house, to gather papers that would bind them in law when she turned 18, a marriage that would give Han a name, a birth certificate, a path to school. Her heart wavered, torn between joy and caution. She'd carried this life through hunger and cold, her hands steady, but now with the promise of a legal bond, she felt both anchored and adrift, as if learning again how to trust the days ahead. The mountain was home, its streams, its trails, its stubborn earth, but it held dreams too fragile as the mist that clung to its slopes. The sun climbed, its warmth piercing the fog, casting golden threads across the yard. Lytuca fed the chickens, Han at her side, her small hands tossing grain, her chatter a spark that lit the air. The coop was a world of its own, 100 chicks huddled in a corner, their soft forms a promise of the market, tended apart from the older hens to grow strong. Lytuca's hands moved gently, checking their warmth, her thoughts drifting to the foxes that prowled the hills, their shadows a threat she and Tien had learned to outwit. Han giggled, mimicking her mother's motions, her tiny fingers scattering grain in clumsy arcs, and Lytuca laughed, the sound rare and bright, a moment of grace amid the labor. Tien worked nearby, his knife steady as he cut bamboo, the stalks falling to form a frame for the rose gate, a dream of beauty woven into their toil. "It'll climb," he said, his voice light, his hands tying the stems with twine, his eyes catching hers with a warmth that steadied her. Lytuca nodded, her hands washing tomatoes, their red skins cool against her fingers. "A gate of flowers," she said, her voice soft, her heart catching at the thought of a home adorned, of a future where Han could grow under beauty's shade. They worked, their hands moving as one, the yard a canvas of their shared hope. Lytuca washed vegetables, her fingers tracing the curves of eggplants, their purple skins gleaming like dusk. Tien tied bamboo, his motion sure, the rose gate taking shape under his hands. Han played, her laughter a thread weaving through the morning's hush, her small form darting between the garden rows, chasing a butterfly that danced above the greens. Lytuca peeled an orange, its juice sharp on her fingers, and offered a piece to Han. The girl's eyes lit, her giggle a spark as she chewed, juice dripping down her chin, and Lytuca smiled, the sweetness bursting against her own tongue, a surprise that felt like grace. "Share with Dad," she said, tossing Tien a wedge, her voice light, a rare playfulness breaking through her reserve. He laughed, his hand catching it, his grin boyish as if testing a memory from softer days. "Good for selling," he said, his eyes crinkling. "Or eating with our girl." The morning deepened and Lytuca moved to the sprout shed, her hands lifting the cloth over trays of mung beans, their white tails curling like secrets in the dark. The sprouts were her pride, grown in the cool shade, their crispness a small triumph over the mountain's harsh soil. She thought of the market, of the coins they'd earn, each one a step toward Han's future, toward the school that loomed in her dreams like a distant star. She glanced at Han, now crouched by the coop, her small hands tracing patterns in the dirt, her chatter a melody that softened the yard's edges. Lytuca's heart swelled, joy and fear entwined, as if the earth had shifted beneath her. The sprouts, the chicks, the greens, they were theirs, dreams made real. Yet the years of want had left echoes, doubts that whispered in the quiet, fears that Han's laughter might not drown them. The day waned, the sun climbing higher, casting long shadows over the hills. Lytuca gathered vegetables, her basket heavy, the greens fresh with the morning's dew, their leaves curling softly at the edges. Tien prepared to leave, the motorbike's engine coughing to life, its hum a steady pulse against the mountain's silence. His mission was clear, to fetch the papers from his mother's house, documents that would make their love lawful, that would give Han a name, a path to school. Lytuca watched him go, her chest tight, her thoughts turning inward. She thought of the years before, when love was a vow unspoken, when Han's birth was a joy unrecorded, a secret held between them and the mountain. She thought of the papers, a fragile bridge to a future where their daughter could learn, could dream beyond the mountain's grip. Her heart wavered, torn between the warmth of this moment and the fear that the papers might not come, that the law might falter where love had endured. Tien's journey was no small thing. The road wound through valleys, its curves slick with mud from recent rains, the air heavy with the scent of pine and earth. He rode alone, the motorbike's rumble a companion, his thoughts drifting to Tieu to Han, to the weight of what he carried. At his mother's house the papers waited, yellowed sheets tucked in a tin box, proof of his birth, his name, his right to claim a life with Tieu. But the village was a maze of memory, its narrow paths lined with faces that knew his past, his youth, the boy who'd left to build a life on the mountain. His mother greeted him, her hands trembling as she handed over the documents, her eyes searching his face for the son she'd raised. "For the girl," she said, her voice low, and Tien nodded, his throat tight, the weight of her words settling in his chest. The clerk's office was next, a squat building at the village's edge, its walls stained by years of rain. The process was slow, the clerk's questions sharp, dates, names, signatures, each one a hurdle, each one a reminder of how fragile their dreams were. Tien stood firm, his voice steady, But his hand shook as he clutched the envelope, the papers inside a promise he could barely believe. The market called and lytuca went, Han in her arms, the trail steep under her feet. The village hummed, voices calling, the air thick with spice and dust, the scent of grilled corn mingling with the tang of fresh herbs. She moved through the stalls, her basket heavy with greens, her eyes scanning for buyers, her heart heavy with the day's weight. Han clung to her, her small hands tugging at her sleeve, her chatter a faint echo under the market's din. Lytuca met a neighbor, a young woman with kind eyes, her hair tied back with a faded scarf. "Let me help," the woman said, her voice warm, her hands lifting the basket with ease, and Lytuca nodded, her throat tight, her heart easing at the kindness. They sold the greens, the coins heavy in her pouch, each one a small victory, a step toward the future they dreamed of. A vendor's jest caught her ear, talk of love, of papers that bind, and her chest tightened, a spark brushing her calm. She thought of a sin, his journey a weight in her heart, and of Han, her laughter a light that both warmed and unsettled her. The walk home was heavy, the heat pressing, the vegetables sold but the trail long, and Lytuca's heart lingered on the fragility of dreams. Dusk fell, the sky bruising purple, a crescent moon rising over the hills, its light touching the stream that wound through the valley. Lytuca lit the hearth, the flames casting warmth across the room, their glow dancing on the bamboo walls. She stirred a pot, the green scent mingling with smoke, her thoughts turning inward. She hadn't counted the hours since Asin's departure, hadn't marked the moments of joy reclaimed. Han's giggle, the neighbor's kindness, the coins in her pouch. Her life was a rhythm. Fire, food, Han's laughter, the mountain's embrace. Yet beneath it a question stirred. Would the papers come, and could their love so fiercely lived find its place in the world's eyes? She fed Han, her small hands eager, her chatter a balm, but Lytuca's eyes drifted to the path, waiting for Asin's return. The motorbikes hum a hope she clung to. Asin appeared, his steps heavy, his shirt damp with the day's heat, his face lined with the weight of the journey. "Papers," he said, his voice low, his hands clutching a worn envelope, its edges creased from the ride. "It's done, Tucia. We'll marry when you're 18. Lytuca nodded, her throat tight, her fingers tracing the envelope's edge, the paper cool against her skin. She thought of their past, a wound now scabbed but tender, nights of hunger, days of toil, the fear that Han would grow without a name. She thought of this moment, a light that both warmed and unsettled her, a promise that felt too vast to hold. She thought of Han, her daughter's life a thread they both held, and of herself, balancing love with the fear of dreams unkept. The envelope was a vow made real, yet her heart lingered on the fragility of hope, on the school that waited, on the years that would test them. They ate rice and greens warmed by the hearth, Han nestled between them, her small hands clutching a spoon, her giggles a spark in the quiet. Asin spoke, his voice low, of the garden's promise. More greens to sell, a home to build, a future stitched from small gains. "We'll make it work," he said, his eyes meeting hers, a vow unspoken, his hand resting briefly on hers, warm and steady. Lytuca nodded, her throat tight, her fingers tracing the bowl's rim, the clay cool against her skin. She thought of the rose gate, its stems a dream of beauty, and of the chickens, their chicks a hope for the market. She thought of the papers, a key to Han's future, and of their love, a bond that needed no law yet sought its blessing. The green's flavor lingered on her tongue, a reminder of what they'd earned, and what they still might lose. The evening deepened, the fire's glow casting shadows across the room, the bamboo walls softening in the light. Lytuca cleared the bowls, her hands steady, the clink of clay a rhythm in the quiet. Asin played with Han, his laughter low, her giggles a spark that lit the night, her small hands tugging at his shirt as she climbed into his lap. The envelope lay on the table, its edges worn, its promise heavy, and Lytuca's heart wavered, torn between the joy of this moment and the weight of what lay ahead. She thought of the neighbor's kindness, a thread in their patchwork life, and of the market, where their labor turned to coins, a fragile bridge to a life less bound by want. She thought of Han, her daughter's future, a dream both fierce and frail, and of herself, a woman who'd carried love through years of want, now standing on the edge of a vow made real. Night deepened, the moon's glow spilling through the door, touching the bamboo walls, the quilt where Han slept, her breath soft and even, the mat where Asin rested, his breath steady but heavy with the day's toil. Lytieuca stepped outside, the air cool, the stars sharp against the dark, their light a map of questions without answers. The mountain loomed, its silence vast, the valley hidden beyond its folds, the streams murmur a faint lullaby. She gazed down the path the Tien had ridden, the bike's tracks faint in the dust, her heart a fragile bridge between triumph and uncertainty. The papers were theirs, a dream made real, yet the years of want had left echoes, doubts that whispered in the quiet, fears that Han's laughter might not drown them. She thought of the garden, its greens a seed of their future, the sprouts curling in the dark, the chicks growing strong. She thought of their dreams, small but stubborn, like roots breaking stone, and of the rose gate, its flowers a promise yet to bloom. She lingered, the scent of earth and oranges wrapping her, the night's chill brushing her skin like a memory. The stars held no answers, only light, and lytuca let the stillness hold her, a breath before dawn's demands. Tomorrow she'd rise, gather eggs, check the sprouts, ride the bike to market, her steps sure despite the weight. Han would laugh, chasing chicks or butterflies, her voice a melody that softened the yard's edges. A Tien would tend the garden, his hands steady, the rose gate growing under his care. Life would unfold, patient as the hills, its rhythm unbroken, fire, food, laughter, love. The papers would bind them, a marriage recognized when she turned 18, a path to Han's school, to a future unwritten. But in her soul a question lingered, delicate as moonlight. Would this promise hold, or would it slip, like mist through bamboo, leaving only traces to hold? Somewhere in the valley's hush, their future waited, and here on the mountain, her family breathed, a fragile circle of love and hope, its edges softened by a sky too vast to promise forever.